words, and thank you all for being here. It's an honor to be here before you. In the presentation, I thought I should highlight how I ended up as Deputy Minister for Security, a little bit about myself. I'm also going to talk about the challenges and the threats that are facing our country. The enemy, not necessarily who they are, but how they operate. We're also going to talk about how we, as the security forces, operate, how we were about a year ago and where we are at right now. And lastly, a few words from somebody who has, now 16, 17 years of experience from the field to you, the future leaders of this country. Some of you might not remember, some of you may do. I was a child when I saw the Soviet Union depart Afghanistan. My mother was a widow with 6 children. We stayed in Afghanistan and we saw the destruction of Afghanistan, Kabul in general. We lived near the airport, Bulakaya on the 5th floor, and we saw the fighting, internal fighting that went on in the country in various parts of Afghanistan, but mostly Kabul. And this area was probably one of the front lines of the destruction of Kabul. We then saw the rise of Taliban. We saw the Taliban, we saw the brutality of their regime, we saw our family members, sisters, mothers, disrespected and beaten for not wearing the right dress or appropriate dress. We saw a music ban. Okay, the world attention came to us when the United States was attacked by the Al-Qaeda network. Although the attack plan was conducted, or the operation was planned in various countries around the world, but their leadership was here in Afghanistan. They were hosted by the Taliban regime because Al-Qaeda was paying funding for the Taliban operations as well as the narcotics. But that's what was funding the Taliban regime, and it brought the world's attention to Afghanistan. And that's when my journey started. I went to Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst. I couldn't understand a word what my Scottish colour sergeant was saying because I don't understand Scottish accent, but I managed to learn it as time went on. And I also had an opportunity to go to the United States to go to Ranger School. It's a school that is one of the toughest schools. It's only for 2 months, but you get 40 minutes of sleep, and if you're lucky, and 1 meal a day, and you lose about 25 kilos in 2 months. It makes you a very tough and air, sea, and ground operations that turned me into a special operations officer. And I had the honor of leading that unit all the way from the bottom to the senior level. We in the special operations community, we conduct high-risk operations around the country. We go after enemy leadership, their key nodes, but as well as responding to the high-profile attacks that occurred in the city. Some of those, as already mentioned earlier, the attack on AUF and 100 others that happened in the city, sometimes twice a day. In the past, it was one every day, previous elections, and we just had to respond. And in every attack, innocent lives were taken. Coming into the office, I was welcomed with these challenges. To start with, at the beginning of this year, the Taliban put out their spring offensive, and they called it Al-Fatah, which meant victory. Actually, I believed as well, looking at the situation, I thought they will be able to take 4 or 5 provinces in the country because our casualty rates were breathtaking. It was actually mind-boggling to see 50, 60 of the young police dying every day. When I took office, every morning, I get an update, 50 killed, 60 killed, 70, just the police. I'm not talking about the army. If you count 2 per province, that's about 74 or so, or 78. But we're getting about 50 to 70 every day. That's killed, not wounded. Unacceptable. And this is our youth. This is our 18 to 25-year-old Afghan police dying around the country. The crime rate, another challenge that gave a sense of insecurity to our people. Not the petty crime of somebody stealing your mobile phone or so on. It was major crimes. Kidnapping, murders, large drug trades in the city, some of it actually in universities and sort of organizations that you wouldn't even think it's going to happen there. But that is what I was faced with, to tackle these challenges. Lastly, Ambassador Khalilzad's initiative in Qatar with the Taliban negotiation. The ambiguity of what's next was in the minds of everybody, including myself. What's going to happen to our country? What's going to happen to our security forces? How is the peace deal going to look like? How are we going to implement it? All of that have created a sense of worriness to our people. And lastly, the presidential elections, which the Ministry of Interior and I had to lead the commission for providing the security of the elections process, all the way from May till still going on around the country. Okay, so now let's talk about the enemy, not necessarily who they are, but how they operated and still do. Okay, to start with, when you think about an organization, you think that organization has a leader, has deputies, operation chiefs, it has various layers, and you have support nodes and so on. But that's not who we're faced with. We're faced with a network. You'd think if you take the leader out, you'd stop the organization. They can barely feel it. You can take out any member of this network. It will morph, and it will change itself, and it will keep operating. Each and every one of them have the abilities to communicate and reach out, to get support from each other. They're fast when they do operational planning, fast when they need resources to identify a target, bring the attackers in and do an operation, whatever that may be. They're also very lethal. They don't care about civilian casualties. They don't care about destruction of properties. They don't care about lives of innocent people. And lastly, they're constantly adapted, as I explained earlier. You could take out a network, a cell in Kabul or in Nangarhar, it will pop its head in Herat or somewhere else. That's what we're dealing with. Okay, and then I looked at our force. Now I've taken over this organization, what do we have? To start with, poor leadership. We had poor leaders, morally, ethically, and physically poor. On daily basis, I would get calls from police chiefs, we need more ammunition, we need more troops, we need more equipment. But I would ask, what is your plan to defeat the threats and challenges you have? No answer, or the answers were not convincing. In the meantime, the enemy was attacking us. The ratio, the rate of casualties that I described was staggering. Our leaders and provincial police chiefs were just thinking about more money, more equipment, more and more and more. Secondly, the system to support the frontline troops was just not right. It was poor. We were thinking about HR, their promotions, their leave, their food, their weapons, whatever support they needed. If a casualty was in Zabul province, it will take 2-3 weeks to get them back. So the support node back here in Kabul was inadequate, and the system just didn't operate as it should to support that frontline troops that are defending our country. Thirdly, corruption is a big issue. And that's very close to us because I believe it's the corruption that causes, it's not the enemy that's, we've pretty much broken their back this year, but it's not that. It's the corruption that is our enemy. You probably have heard of the ghost police. In Tashkil, they have 2,000. That's what it says. But they have 1,500 present. So where are the other 500? The issue was previous leadership would just be in the office and whatever was presented to them, my paper, okay, that's good to go. But when you go to the field and you actually say, okay, faces, names to faces, they don't exist. So what happens, as the system is very poor, the pay goes cash from Kabul to the Mastufiyat in a province, and then it gets distributed. The 500 soldiers' salary gets distributed between various leaders in the province, to include the civil government as well. So all of this has created the distance between us and our people. Okay. As I mentioned before, I grew up in a very small elite organization. I have the honor of having some of my colleagues here, General Mir and General Kambe's, and we grew up in a family of very small, elite, dedicated officers. We've been part of the Ministry of Interior, but we haven't. They've only provided us with some technical support and so on, but we've been kept outside the organization, just like AUAF. We've been kept outside that, and we've never allowed external hands to come in and sort of parachute an individual to be in charge of us or say, well, this is my cousin, he needs to be part of it. We say, this is the standard. If you can be part of the standards, you're in. If not, you can't be. And when we were forced sometimes to accept someone, we took him on some of the operations we do, it just requires a lot of physicals. You're doing 10, 15 kilometer walks at night with full equipment, with NVGs, and it is tough, believe me. That person never wanted to join the unit because it was tough. So that, besides being a good organization, and the rest of MOI also has small units that are very good, But what the issue was, we are a hierarchy, a pyramid. And I'll go in a little bit more details of why this system, the hierarchy, does not fit to counter the network. What's the issue with that in the current world, current days? It's our systems are ponderous and slow. For a unit, let's say the bottom right, left is a small unit. For a unit to operate, it will need to go to the boss, the boss's boss, the boss's boss's boss to get something done, and then at the top there will be a discussion, and then they come back down to subordinate, subordinate, subordinate to get things done. Let me give you an example, and we were faced with this on a daily basis. If there's a truck bomb in Wardak province and it's planning to come and attack AUAF, it will take about a week for us to respond. It would in the past, about a year ago. Here's how. We get the information that there's a truck bomb in so-and-so location is planning to attack AUAF. We take that information and we put it into a pishnahad. It will go to Staramahkama, Supreme Court, to the Chief Justice to sign it that we should be able to go operate. If it's Thursday, then good luck. You come back on Saturday. On Saturday, the Chief Justice is available. He writes, proceed in accordance to law, as if we don't. Okay, you get that. Then you prepare what we call a CONOPS, a concept of operation. It's a 3-4 page plan that how you're going to do this operation, with how many troops involved, and so on and so forth, if it's by air or by ground or so on. Then that needs a deputy minister's signature, deputy minister of security. So if you're lucky to catch him, it takes 2-3 days to go behind, as if Qara Shakhsid Basha, right? It's like your own personal thing. You go behind the door and say, okay, I'm trying to stop this truck bomb. Can you sign this operation? Then he signs it for you. So that's 4 more days. By the way, the truck bomb is waiting for you, okay? It's in there. Then you come back, and then you prepare your tactical plan. That's when you make your orders to explain it to your guys, how we're going to do this. And you know the terrain and geography of Afghanistan. In order for us to have the element of surprise, we need helicopters. We need to get there fast and in and out. Guess what? The weather is bad. You have to wait. There's technical issues. You have to wait. Or you're not a priority. Somebody else is the priority. Or so-and-so is flying his couches and sofas to Badakhshan in a helicopter instead of stopping a truck bomb. I mean, this is what the reality was. So if you're lucky, it will take you about a week to respond to that truck bomb, if still there. That's who we were. A very slow, the best equipped, well-trained, great ideology, good mentality. You know, we want to do the right thing. The system is ponderous. It's not we were not able to respond to the attacks that were happening. We're divided by our own silos. Ministry of Interior relies on the intelligence agency to provide us intelligence, and we rely on Ministry of Defense to give us helicopters or some other support. So we're interdependent on each other. But because there are silos, you have to go all the way up to the chain, to the top, and from my level to go to my peer in Ministry of Defense or intelligence, then you go back down. It will take days, while the enemy's attacking us every day. And lastly, we're divided by our own. We all want to take credit for successful operation. And if things go wrong, it wasn't me. If things are good, obviously it was me. Anyway, I'll try to explain this graph. Every brief presentation has to have a graph. If the y-axis shows the rate of change in the external environment, and the x-axis shows how often you align your organization, which means how often do you get everybody together and put them on the same page. It makes sense that there's a direct relationship between how fast things are changing, how often do you need to align your organization. So what does this mean? In the Kennefen model, or the framework, there are 4 states. The first one is simple. This is before our great-grandparents, when things were very simple. The relationship between cause and effect were obvious. You could see it, you could throw the ball, you know where it's going to end. Pretty straightforward. Then we hit the Industrial Revolution. It became complicated. Engines came to play. If you needed to fix things, you needed an expert to come and fix it. If I hit the switch and if this light doesn't come on, you need somebody to come and open it up and fix it for you. Then we entered the complex world. That's the time when the relationship between cause and effect required a system. Financial crisis, hurricanes, and so on and so forth. Currently, we're living in chaotic world, that the relationship between cause and effect could only be perceived in retrospect. An individual in Tunisia burns himself, Arab Spring happens. Hosni Mubarak gets, you remember the Tahrir Square? So you cannot predict what will happen based on the actions you take. It was a Friday 3 to 4 weeks ago. I was at home. It was one of the days that I had 10 hours of sleep. And it was 6 p.m. I get a call that one of our police officers had stopped a car that belonged to a parliament member, and he had blacked out windows and he had weapons. And when the police officer stopped him, he jumped out and he wanted to shoot the police officer. And the police did his job. But later there was this, as you probably are tracking, there was a lot of issues. I didn't do anything. I had literally had no idea this happened, and I had no idea what went on. But it became such a big news that there were a group of Afghans in the social media attacking the parliament. Somehow they made me the Kim Jong-un, being the, and I was like, I have no idea. This is the world we're living in, that you cannot anticipate what will happen. This is the line that you're living in. There's unpredictable and it's predictable. We're living in the predictable because we want to be in the predictable. AUAF is a predictable organization. It's a complicated. You're comfortable. You know what it is. You know the rules. And that's where you live. But the world outside us, the enemies that we're dealing with are complex. Okay. Some of you probably know GMC, the cars, General Motors companies. It's American made. This is their organizational structure on 3 January 1921. I guarantee you it's exactly the same today. I bet you AUF is the same. You have David Sidney as the president and all of you and their branches. Because guess what? This is what the MOI is. This is what the rest of the world is. Because that's how management works. You need the hierarchy and you need systems, you need stability, you need decision-making authorities to run an organization. But as I explained, we were not able to defeat the enemy that we have with this structure. That doesn't mean we need to destroy our structure and make everybody sort of a guerrilla. But the way we operated, the way we communicated, we had to change that. For the entire country, 34 provinces, all of the directorates in Kabul, the logistics, the IT, right? All the directorates in Kabul and 34 provinces and districts, we have connected them on a very disciplined cadence. We have created a system where we identify what the priorities are. First of all, where the challenges are, find the person and the team, connect the team to solve that on a timely manner. Every day we're predictable. We're sitting in this giant VTC connecting 3,000 people, 90 minutes, and we're making decisions in a very fast pace. We've pretty much become that. That's how we've been able to defeat the enemy. We haven't added anybody. We just changed how we operate. And we changed the leaders. We had to change the leaders and individuals who were not able to change, who didn't want to change to this system. Sa'adat, you talked a lot, so show me the results, right? That's what you're probably thinking. When I took over, every month, remember we have to measure ourselves on number of operations we do, because that's what we are. Private sector, Fortune 500 companies have to look at how much money they make or how much output they are. Apple needs to look at how many phones they sell. We need to look at ourselves, how many operations we do. When I took the leadership of Deputy Minister for Security, we were doing 12 operations a month. That means 3 a week. Obviously, it wasn't enough. So what do I do as a leader? As you come in, you say, okay, let's do more. Let's work late hours, and we need to work faster because bombs are going off and people are dying. The maximum I could get out of it, same people, same process. Remember the predictable, the below the line. The maximum I could get was 30 operations, 1 every night. Still not enough. This is around March time. We still had attacks. We still had explosions. Districts were falling. Police was being killed every day. Clearly not enough. Then we started making hard decisions. We've got to change the people. We've got to remove the corrupt, the incompetent, the physically, mentally unprepared leaders. They've got to go. We brought new leaders in. We promoted them. We instilled trust in them when we said, get the job done, and we gave them processes. We supported them. We changed how we operated. Then, this is what we do now. We do 300 operations a month. We're doing 10 missions every night. That's, for some of you, some of you know math, that's 25x. This is the pace where we were, this is where we are now. We haven't really added more people or resources or so on. We just changed some individuals, some leaders, and the process. And we have broken their back. We can continue this as long as it needs. We are hammering them every night. Intelligence comes in that forum as I described. We get the intelligence. You don't need to go to, we brought the Sauron walls and the justice system in that room. So you don't have to go to the Supreme Court to get approvals. We still have to be by the law, but we have them here because we're at crisis. In the same room. We have the helicopters and the pilots, everybody here. They look at the targets, they know where to do. The force is ready, and we just keep hitting them every night. And that's what we've been doing. We'll discuss the future, and maybe there's a Q&A for that, but you probably think, what next? Okay, is this what we want to be, constantly at war? I don't know. But as a leader, as somebody who I have some scar tissue, and I've learned it the hard way, and I thought I should share some of this, my experience with you, the future leaders of this country. You can't just go into an organization and say, well, I'm the expert, I've graduated from AUF, I'm much more smarter than you, this is what I want to do. You know, some of the movies you watch, the boss comes in and he walks and he throws his jacket here and he gives high five to this and he's like, do this, clean that, and he just walks to his office. We cannot do that. You have to study and get to the bottom of the problem. We've got to know the people, the culture, the organization, how they operate. You need to learn first. We've got to watch our speed. As I say, watch our speed. By that, when I would go for a year or so to outside to another organization or to school, I come back and I look at my own unit. They're using new technology for military operation, new systems, new tactics, and I'm like, wow, I feel old. So you have to keep up with the pace of change and the pace of change in the environment. My experience, as I mentioned, you've got to be able to adapt to size and scope. Be consistent in what you say, what you do. Bring that to the organization that you lead. If you're constantly bouncing to make different decisions, you will not go forward. You've got to pick a point and be consistent and march towards it. And lastly, you as leaders, you got to have self-discipline. You got to have discipline in your organization. You've got to motivate your subordinates and your team to instill the confidence. This is the video of President John F. Kennedy. It's okay, okay? And he says, we should go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. He challenged his country to land a man on the moon. Why? Because the Soviet Union at the time, who was the enemy, had the first ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile. They launched the first ICBM, the first animal in space, first satellite in space, first human in space, first images of the far side of the moon. The United States said, we are the US and we need to land a man on the moon. It took them 8 years, from 1961 to 1969. You might think, well, what's the big deal? They just did it. It was a huge deal. 300,000 people, 200 universities, 20,000 contractors, all of them to land this team on the moon. It took leadership to give the team motivation to do this job. It took leadership to guide the country towards this, and it took leadership to make this happen and be successful. We, as future leaders, we have a choice. We either let others decide for us, or we stand up, we take the lead, and we shape our own future. The choice is ours. Thank you.